my name's Amanda and welcome to my Crown of Thorns mini quilt tutorial. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this quilt top that is behind me. This quilt is made using a giant version of the Crown of Thorns block, which has just been simply tipped on its point and then put triangles in the corners to make it into a lovely little mini quilt. Now this little mini quilt has been made in collaboration using the RJR Fabrics Cotton Supreme Solids, hence why there's lots of colours in this quilt, but I'll talk a little bit more about the block hop that I'm involved in at the end of the tutorial. Now of course if you want to follow along and make this quilt for yourself, you will find all of the measurements and cutting instructions as usual down in the description box below. I will also list all of the different colours that I have used in this quilt if you would like to use them as well. So enough of my chit chat, let's get into how you make this little mini quilt. To make the quilt top you'll need to cut two 16-inch squares, 5 4.5-inch squares and 16 5-inch squares from the white fabric, then one 5-inch square from 16 colour gradient fabrics, and then 4 4.5-inch squares from a grey fabric. Start by making 16 half square triangles. To do this, mark a line on one side of the 5-inch white squares using a ruler and pencil. Pair each white square evenly with a coloured square and pin them together. Once all of the squares have been pinned, take them to the sewing machine. Place the right hand side of the foot along the left side of the line and sew a 1/4-inch seam. Carefully feed through the next square, keeping the foot to the left of the line. Once you've sewn through the last one, remove the chain of squares from the machine, turn them around and sew a 1/4-inch seam along the other side of the pencil line until you reach the end. Next, snip all of the threads joining the squares together. Then with a ruler and blade, cut each square in half along the pencil line. As you go along, separate the triangles into two piles. As for this quilt top, you will only need one half square triangle of each colour to make up the block. Once you finish cutting and separating the squares, place one pile of half square triangles to one side to be used for another project of your choice. Take the other pile of half square triangles to the ironing board and press each one open, ensuring the seam is set to the darker side of fabric. Then, using a set square, trim all 16 half square triangles to a perfect 4.5-inch square. To do this, line up the 45-degree line on the ruler with the center seam, while ensuring all edges of the ruler are on the inside of the half square triangle unit. Once happy with the ruler placement, trim the first two edges off using your blade. Then spin the block around, line up the 45-degree line back along the center seam and the edges of the ruler along the two edges you've just cut. Trim off the last two edges and that's your perfect 4.5-inch half square triangle unit ready to go. Repeat the same set of steps to square up the other 15 half square triangles. Start the layout of the block design by placing a 4.5-inch white square in the center, then placing the 4 grey squares around it. Next, position the last 4 4.5-inch white squares along the outsides next to the grey squares. Starting with the yellow to red half square triangles, place the light yellow half square triangle into the center corner, with the light orange half square triangle next to it, the darker orange above the yellow, and then lastly the red half square triangle into the top corner. Follow the same layout pattern when adding the next 3 groups of colours, ensuring all of the coloured triangles are pointing towards the centre of the block. Begin the construction of the block by piecing the 4 coloured half square triangle sections first. To do this, separate a section into 2 rows, then flip one half square triangle onto the other, ensuring that they're evenly matched up, then pin them into place. Sew a 1/4-inch seam along the edge that's pinned, chain stitching the next pair of squares through. Snip the threads that join them together, and then on the back of each row, use your fingers to open out the center seam. Then, with a medium to hot steamy iron, press the seams flat open. Lay the rows back into the correct order and flip the top row over onto the bottom one. Line up the flat center seams and then pin the edge evenly into place. Sew a 1/4-inch seam along this edge making sure that the center seams are lying flat before sewing over them. Open out the block section and patiently press the seam you've just sewn open flat. Then give the section a good press on the front and add it back to the block. Repeat the same set of steps to complete the green, blue and purple half square triangle sections. Next, take the grey and white squares that separate each of the coloured half square triangle sections and sew them together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press their seams flat open with the iron and then put them back into place. The next step is to piece the block into 3 rows. So starting with the top row, flip the white and grey square duo onto the yellow-red half square triangle section. Line up the 2 open seams and then pin the edge into place. Take it to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam along this edge. Press the seam towards the white and grey square duo and then repeat the same steps to add the green half square triangle section, completing the top row. Give the row a good press before adding it back to the main block. Then do exactly the same thing to piece together the bottom and center rows. Next, take these last 2 rows and flip the center one over on top of the bottom one. Nest the 2 center seams and pin into place. Line up the rest of the edge evenly and pin. Slowly sew a 1/4 inch seam along this edge, taking your time as you navigate over all of the seams. Then set the seam as usual and press it towards the center row. Lay the rows back out and flip the top row over, lining it up with the center row. Again, nest and pin the seams in the middle and then do the same with the rest of the edge. Then just like before, carefully sew a 1/4 inch seam down the pinned edge, ensuring all of the seams are flat before sewing over them. And lastly, press the seam towards the center row and give the block a good press. Then finally, to finish the quilt top, cut the 2 16-inch white squares in half, leaving you with 4 triangles. Take your Crown of Thorns block and fold it in half, making a small dent to mark the halfway point. Do the same with one of the white triangle pieces, ensuring all of the points match up. Line up the center fold marks and pin the triangle into place along the top edge of the block. Sew another 1/4 inch seam along this edge and then press the seam outwards towards the triangle piece. Trim off the overhang from the triangles and then simply repeat the same set of steps to attach the other 3 triangles to the other 3 edges of the block. And once you've finished, that is the top of your Crown of Thorns mini quilt completed. From here, you can baste, quilt and bind this mini in any way you choose. I quilted mine with an easy grid-like pattern and then used a beautiful creamy solid to bind the edges. So here I've just shown you how to simply piece together this beautiful little quilt top, and just like I said, it is completely up to you the way that you choose to quilt and bind your little mini. Now of course you are more than welcome to make your quilt in the same way that I have, or you can do it completely different, use completely different fabrics and quilt it differently and just make it just yours. So like I mentioned at the start of this video, this mini quilt and tutorial was in collaboration with a blog hop that I was invited to join by RJR Fabrics, and it is a blog hop showcasing their Cotton Supreme solids. So I was asked to make a quilt using their solids and to write about it and share them with you. And of course, if you would like to read that blog post, there is a link down in the description box below that you can go and check out. There are lots more photos of this quilt and you can read a little bit more about the process of this little mini quilt coming together. Now of course, if you are going to give this lovely little mini quilt a go, let me know, share your photos with me. You can tag me on Instagram, you can share them on Twitter or on my Facebook page. All of the links to all of those places are down in the description box as well. If you would like to see more of the things that I do here on my channel, don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you come and join us. And as always, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you another time very, very soon. Bye!